African Americans have lived in Arlington for generations. Their stories are unique, but the forces that shape their lives and communities are mirrored in the practices of segregation all across the nation. Some of Arlington's earliest African American landowners were the Syphax family, which lived on the Arlington House property in the early 1800s, and the Jones family, settling in Green Valley in 1844. During the Civil War, the federal government established Freedman's Village as Arlington's first planned community. It thrived until 1900, before the federal government closed it to create Arlington Cemetery. Many residents relocated to the nearby settlement of Queen City. Halls Hill in North Arlington began in 1881, when Basil Hall began selling land to former slaves. By 1900, 38% of Arlington residents were black, living in 12 settlements throughout the county. As Arlington grew in the first half of the 20th century, most of these black communities were pushed aside in favor of white suburban development. New suburban communities were being built at a rapid pace, both single-family homes and garden apartments, but they were not available to African American residents. One tool frequently used in Arlington and other communities was a deed restriction, usually put in place at the time a home was built, limiting the home's use to members of the Caucasian race. In the 1930s, the residents of the whites-only Fostoria and Waycroft neighborhoods built a 7-foot-tall cinder block wall separating themselves from Halls Hill, cutting off most access points to the established black community. This kind of wall would have been helpful for obtaining financing from the Federal Housing Administration, which at the time viewed different racial groups to be inharmonious. Around the same time, communities around the nation began to put in place a new kind of land use regulation known as zoning. By 1938, the county had used this tool to ban row houses, which were primarily used by African Americans. Though this style provided housing opportunities for many people and was common in Washington, D.C. and Alexandria, it was viewed as distasteful in Arlington. Building the Pentagon in the 1940s struck another blow at Arlington's black community, when residents of Queen City and East Arlington were evicted to make way for the building's road network. Many eventually settled in Green Valley. By mid-century, only 3 African American neighborhoods remained in Arlington. Because of their long history and stable population, home ownership in these areas was common. But these were the only areas within the county where blacks could live. During the Civil Rights era, physical and legal walls began to crumble. School desegregation came first, but open and fair housing laws would take another 10 years to achieve. In 1965, a group of 2,500 volunteers in Northern Virginia conducted the most extensive fair housing campaign the United States had seen, collecting 45,000 signatures by going door to door. Then, in the wake of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, Congress finally passed the Fair Housing Act of 1968. When it came to renting, buying, or financing housing, it would no longer be legal to discriminate on the basis of race. 2 months later, Arlington County became the first jurisdiction in Virginia to pass a local fair housing ordinance with a vote of 3-2. The meeting was briefly disrupted by a member of the American Nazi Party, which was headquartered in Boston. The following year, Arlington's ban on row houses was removed from zoning policy. Much has changed in the 50 years since. Arlington has become home to a population of immigrants from around the globe. But despite these changes, most areas of Arlington have remained the same as they were when they were built during the days of Jim Crow and legal segregation. In fact, in many ways, zoning rules that govern Arlington's low-density residential areas have become more restrictive over time, while only a small part of the county's land was made available to meet the growing housing needs of the area. Today, many residents of Arlington's historically black neighborhoods have aging homes that often don't comply with zoning laws that were put in place after they were built. The squeeze of outdated zoning, gentrification, rising housing prices, and lack of options have forced many of Arlington's black residents to leave. Now Arlington, like the nation, is taking a hard look at its past. It's time to ask ourselves if we are ready to dismantle the walls of indifference once and for all, and build an Arlington where people of all walks of life are welcome and can afford to live.